Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I'm thrilled to welcome someone who was the former editor and art director of Behrman House. I hope I'm saying that right.
You got it.
That's right. She's been an art teacher who taught on the college level. She's been a lecturer at over 100 schools. She's an award-winning author, illustrator of over 40 picture books, including her latest, Ping Pong Shabbat, from Little B. Please help me welcome Ann Koffsky. Ann, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. I think it's so nice that you do this, and it's really appreciated.
No, I'm glad. No, my pleasure, and I'm glad that you came on. We have a lot to cover, but let's start going back to the beginning. So where did you grow up?
I grew up on Long Island,
Where around?
Lynbrook, Long Island.
Oh, okay.
My father was the rabbi of the local shul there, and that is where we were. I was a rabbi's
You were an
daughter.
observant family?
We were an observant, Orthodox family, and the synagogue was more conservative. So I had a mixed experience growing up because I was sent to Hank, which is a day school, an Orthodox day school.
Okay.
So during the week I was in an Orthodox environment, and on Shabbat I was in a conservative environment. So I got to experience both parts of Judaism right when I was young.
Well, no, I mean, you definitely had a lot of Jews in the area in Long Island, for sure.
Yes, there was no lack of Jews.
So you're in West Hempstead now?
I'm in West Hempstead now. Very, very vibrant modern Orthodox community.
Well, no, I don't, because I lived in Long Island for a while too. I know West Hempstead very well, and whenever I go back, I make it my visit to go to Wing One. So
Okay, there you go. You've hit the highlights.
that's like one of my favorite places. So yeah, I know West Hempstead very well, and you don't see how are things there, like really, like as far you don't see anything like I see in New York, a lot of stuff going on, but you don't experience
I
that
mean,
in
we're the
West Hempstead.
quiet, boring suburb, so
Yeah.
like nobody is out protesting. But earlier this year, our shul did have a bomb threat, and they
Oh
had to
wow.
empty out the shul. And like a lot of other synagogues and shuls and temples around the country, we have up security. So there's the volunteer CSS security, which is, shul members who are trained to, stand outside and just watch.
Hmm.
And then I know that some of the synagogues in the neighborhood have hired armed security,
Wow.
which is in addition to the volunteers from the synagogue itself is like a private security. So,
Yeah.
thank God everybody's safe and nothing bad has happened, and hopefully that will continue.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So let's get back to you. So, what was
Yeah.
one of your favorite books growing up?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, I was a comic book geek. I loved
I'm
comics.
going to get to that too.
Yeah.
I love comic books. Who were your favorites growing up then in comics?
I mean,
I was a big comic collector.
I was a very typical boring comic books person. I was like DC and Marvel, but
Right.
all of them. So it was Superman and Batman and X-Men and Avengers and, all the ones you've heard of. I like saw Dark Horse and like saw it existed, but I was not cool enough to like go into those edgy independent places. So very typical comic books. What was not typical is that there were not that many girls into comics at that time.
Well,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I also maybe it's just looking too it's a stereotype, but didn't think even Orthodox girls being into comic books so much.
You know what it was? We were going on a long family trip on a plane ride, and my parents took us to like the local drugstore and said, pick some comics for the plane.
Okay.
And those comic books were very sneaky because they all ended cliffhangers all the time.
Right.
It's never like done. So we're like, we went on the plane, we read the comic books, and then when we got back home, we're like, okay, but we need to know what happens next. So then she brought us back and we got the next issues. And then when we were hooked, and then finally she found like, a couple towns over in Rockville Center, a really
Comic store.
huge comic book shop. And then that was like a pilgrimage that we did like once a month and like wasted way too much money at.
Well, you have to go
And we
once a
put them in
week,
the
otherwise you miss them.
Well, we would gang it up.
Right.
We were good.
So when did you first start becoming interested in writing?
Writing as a writer, well, I always wrote because, in school they make you write. There's essays and all the things you have to
Mhm.
write, and I was always very good at it and enjoyed it. But I didn't really start as an author. I started as I wanted to be an illustrator. And I
So love
worked
of
very,
art came first for you.
yeah, I mean, I think a love of storytelling is what
Mhm.
happened. And I was first doing it with pictures, with illustrations. And I was showing my portfolio around to people, and they were saying, "Oh, very nice, we'll call you." Okay, then they never called. Writing some projects because then they'll know that I should illustrate them. Like I'll be like, "Here,
Right.
have me illustrate this." So I started writing, and now
So when did you first start
I
realizing
really, really write.
when did you first start realizing that you had, writing, just writing for the sake of writing is one thing, but when did you first start realizing you had like a talent for it though?
Um, I mean, I think in school when I was a kid, I always enjoyed it. Like, I went to town with the writing.
Right.
I always, if we were assigned, a biography, I always really dug into it. Mine were, in fourth grade, this matters. Mine were always the longest. Not that good writing is long necessarily, but I always just kept going with it, and I really enjoyed it. So it started early that I enjoyed writing. Um, but in terms of professionally, it came later.
Well, one of the things I was reading back then, we're going to go back now to what I just mentioned. You just talked about a second ago. Okay, so you went to Yeshiva University. I know a lot of people who did go there too. But here's the cool. Okay, you interned at DC Comics.
I
Okay,
did.
I'm so jealous. How was that? How did that come about? First of all, I need to hear all about that.
Well, as I told you, I was a comic book geek in high school and I
What
collected
what
them
era
all.
was this, by the way, that you interned?
I'm sorry?
What era? Around what
What
time?
era of comics?
Yeah,
It
what
was
year,
like
I
the
guess.
80s. It was the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
So when I interned at DC Comics, that's when they killed Superman. Remember that whole fiasco? I mean, wonderful plot line. Yeah, so so that was what I was there when all that happened. Um,
So how'd you get there?
I got there because I really wanted it and I stalked them. And I called them like every day. And I was just like, I decided I'm in college. I want to be in comics. This is what I really wanted to do first. I wanted
Mhm.
to be in comics. And DC is the place, and I'm in New York City because Yeshiva University is in New York City.
All right.
I want an internship here. And I just called them every day, left messages on their voicemail.
Broke
And
your
they
will.
finally were just sick of me and said, come in. And I got an internship.
Oh,
And
that's
then I
fantastic.
did an internship there like once a week for a semester. And then I continued it and did it for a whole summer, like every day.
Who were some of
And
the
I got
people that were there when you?
piles and piles of free comics.
Oh, who were some of the people that were there when you were?
So when I was interning, there was another intern there named Jordan Gorfinkel. And Jordan Gorfinkel went on to become an editor of Batman. Um, he was like 4 or 5 years older than me. So he was way cooler. And I was this cute little freshman, not knowing what I'm like doing in my life. And he was like out of SVA already. And he was like really together. Um, Denny O'Neil was there when I was there. Oh my God, I can picture everybody's faces, but I can't
Who's the
remember their
editor?
names.
Who's running DC then?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I know where the Xerox machine was. Like it's an internship. I didn't talk to the head person.
Okay. Well, that is such awesome. You get to go around and see
I'm
the.
going to say it was Jeanette. It was a woman who was the
Okay.
head of DC. Jeanette,
I
I
have to
can't
go back
remember.
and look now. But
I
that's
can't remember.
so cool. You also interned at Scholastic.
Yes, so I finished being at DC Comics and I realized that I love comics, but really what I love is storytelling with pictures. Like, and
Mhm.
another way to do that is in children's books. So then I interned at Scholastic, textbooks, and then that led to a job at Scholastic. That was my first job out of college.
So tell me about your writing journey though. So what was the first thing that you had published, and how did that all begin? Kind of.
With writing, okay, so as I said, I went to a trade show at the Javits Center and I met
Mhm.
this company called Schulsinger Judaica, which is a great Judaica company. They're part of Right Light Judaica now, if that means anything to any of your listeners. But they make menorahs and wrapping paper with dreidels on them and, greeting cards and placemats like tchotchkes. They make a
Yeah.
lot of Judaica stuff, gift bags.
Mhm.
And they saw my portfolio and we were schmoozing and they said, "Oh, can you yeah, we see we'd like to do something with you." And I said, "You know what? I can make you a little board book that you could have as a gift item next to the wrapping paper." so that like you could have, so then I wrote a board book for them called All About Passover. So, this is a Seder plate and this is a cup and this is
That's
all
right.
the different things. And then I did a couple more of those for them. And I also did, talking about comics, I did like the Hanukkah Times, which was an activity book, which it looked like a newspaper, but it had comics
Oh,
in it.
very
And
good.
so it had activities for kids to do and Mad Libs inside it. And that was some of the first writing that I did.
And that was the first thing published. Do you remember?
Yeah, but it wasn't published like a book. It was published like a gift bag or a
Right.
greeting card. So like, it was part of this company products. So like I have from back then they would sell in grocery stores. They had like racks with their napkins and paper plates in my book. So I have from back then like a coupon that says like, come to Pathmark, buy gefilte fish and this book. So it was a very different route to start in,
So
not traditional
I was
publishing.
looking, but I was looking through your highlights. So I said, all the big ones. So like I was all jealous of. You had DC Comics, you had Scholastic, and you also did artwork for like places like Hallmark. So
Yes.
so what exactly did you do for them? And how did that come about? So that's another company that I just love.
Well, yeah, they're very good at what they do.
Yeah.
No, I think what happened is I did what's a trade show called Surtex where I bought a
Mm.
table, which is where artists show their work. And people like Hallmark and other companies who want to buy artists walk around, and they saw that I could do Judaica, and they asked me to do a couple of Judaica cards. So I did a nice menorah for them and a couple of dreidels, and Judaica is not everybody draws Christmas trees.
Yeah.
And you could definitely make a lot more money drawing Christmas trees, but sometimes they need that dreidel, and I'm there for that.
What's it like for you to see your artwork that like exhibited like in a Hallmark, card or whatever?
Well, the best part is when you flip it over and it says your name.
Right, of course. How cool is
But
that for you? I mean, that's
yeah, it's just
incredible.
fun. And it's fun when I like, have to send out greeting
Right?
cards for some reason.
You
I
said
use
that
my
your own
own.
work, right? That's,
'Cause I get samples and that's like, so that's always fun.
so you were writing for a while. So how did you go from freelance writing to becoming the senior editor and art director for a publishing house with Behrman? How did that path come
Well, my
about?
kids got bigger. This is the way of life, right? My kids got bigger and I had more time. I was freelancing part-time when my kids were young
Okay.
as an author and as an illustrator. And then they grew up and went to high school and I had a lot more time. So I said, you know what, it's time for me to get a real job. And I had worked with Dina Neusner at
Mhm.
Behrman House. She published, we'd just been in touch and she'd published some of my work and some of my books. So I was actually interviewing for a position at a Jewish newspaper.
Okay.
And they said, we need references. So I called Dina and said, could I use you as a reference? I'm looking for a job. And she said, sure, I'd be happy to give you a reference. And then I said, it's no chance that Behrman House is looking, is there?
Oh,
And she said,
fantastic.
as a matter of fact. And I
Never
didn't
hurts
think
to
it would
ask.
work
Yes.
because I was on Long Island and they're in New Jersey, and there was no way I could commute to New Jersey every day.
Mhm.
So I just didn't think it would be a possibility. But they were willing to be flexible, and I went in once, and after many interviews and lots of chatting, they hired me, which
Oh,
was really great. It
yeah,
was
but how did
a
that
tremendous
come to?
opportunity.
But how does
Hmm?
it come about to get to become senior editor and art director?
Well, senior editor, I'm an editor, so
Right.
I'm not the executive editor. That's the queen.
Okay.
But they call us all senior editors, so we all feel good. Um, but in terms of art director, that was unique. They never had any other art directors. But after I'd been there for a number of years, I said,
Mhm.
I seem to be doing a lot of art direction, and I seem to be assisting everybody else with their art direction. I think you should make that I think I want that title because I'm doing it. And they said, you're right. You're now the art director.
Oh, that's fantastic. What were some of
Yeah.
your responsibilities there?
As art director?
And senior editor, yeah.
Well, when you're, Behrman House is a small shop. It has a
Mhm.
huge footprint because it's been around for more than 100 years, which is
Uh,
crazy. But because they're a small shop, you get to, in the bigger the publisher you are, the smaller your focused your position is.
Hmm.
Like you are the person in charge of photos, or you are the person in charge of board books. At Behrman House, because it's a smaller shop, I got to do all types of projects. I edited board books, I edited picture books, I edited Dr. Ruth's graphic
I was going to
novel.
ask you, how did that come about? Right. How, first of all, I have to hear all about that. What was she like and all the details? I mean, first of all,
I
was she as
mean,
nice
what
as
was
she
she
seemed?
like? She was just like she was on television and the
Uh,
radio. A trip, a huge personality, force of nature. She came in, it was like she was this little tiny thing, but
right.
she commanded the attention from everybody instantly. And a pleasure. I mean, just like it was so cool. She had such a biography. I mean, she was on a kinder transport. She was in
Right,
the
right.
Haganah. She came in and immigrated to America, and then she became this, very well-known celebrity. And with us, she was doing she did a couple picture books, and then she did this graphic novel,
That's
and I got
fantastic.
to edit that. It was really fun.
So what made you
And
stop
art
working
directed.
at, no, what made you stop working at Berman? And
I just really wanted to do my own projects, and that's really it. It was a very, very hard decision because I really enjoyed, and I still continue to do art direction for them freelance once in a while. So I left, but it's like the mob, once you go back, they pull you back in, which is fantastic. So I keep working with them. And I'm still have a couple of my books with them that they're developing right now.
oh,
So I
great.
didn't really leave, I just left.
Okay. No, you at the beginning we talked about you've lectured for like 200 places or something. Like, how did
Yeah.
that whole start coming about? How did you start getting into that?
Um, how did I start? Oh my gosh. I don't know. I've been doing it for so long. I just, it's as you go through your career, you see that there are you basically copy what everybody else is doing. There were other authors who were doing school visits.
Hmm.
And I said, I want to do that too. So, first I did it at my kid's school for free to try it out and see how I did. And then you just start telling other schools, if you'd like to have me come and speak, I could come and do this.
But
And then
you've lectured at some really big places. I was looking at the thing. So are there like a whole bunch of like nerves that go on when you're speaking to like this huge? I mean, I've done school visits. We've all done school visits, and even like the smaller schools, like you get used to it or something, but there's still like a small amount of nerves. But now you start speaking in front of these huge audiences.
Well, no, I don't really speak in front of huge audiences.
Yeah.
Well, because I go to these big places, but I still tell them to keep the audiences at 100 people and under. Otherwise, I'm really not. I hold up a lot of different props when I speak.
Hmm.
They're not going to be able to see it. Like I can project stuff onto the smart board, and then everybody can see it, no matter how many people are in the room. But if I'm like holding up paintbrushes and layouts, and there's stuff that's tangible. So if I go to a big venue,
Hmm.
I say to them, have me speak multiple times to smaller groups of 100 and under, very often 50, or,
Okay.
that way.
So
So, I
manageable.
mean, I'm not speaking to like, MetLife Stadium or anything.
So okay. So going back a bit, as I said you went to Yeshiva University when younger. Later
Mhm.
on, you taught there. So what's that experience like to go back in a place that you graduated in the same environment that you
Oh,
graduated from?
I loved teaching. I taught one semester at
Mhm.
Stern College illustration. I absolutely loved it. I hope at some point to do it again. It was like coming home. It was like coming home. And I'm talking about what I love to do
Mhm.
with, and it would just, that's the best. And what the best thing about college, as opposed to, let's say, fifth grade teaching art in college, is everybody's decided to take your course.
Right.
Whereas when you're teaching younger kids, everybody has to take your
Right.
course.
Sure. Sure.
So that's a very different experience. And they're also like, when you teach younger grades, you're doing a lot of craft, you're doing a lot of setup and cleanup, you're doing a lot of discipline in addition to the art. But when you're in college, it's like they're grown-ups.
Yeah.
So you don't have to clean up their paint, and you don't have to like console them if they spill. It's a very different experience. You're really teaching on a very grown-up adult level. So I loved it. If they would have like, told me to stay forever, I would have. But I did that, and then I got the Behrman House position. So I went from that to
Okay.
that. Yeah.
You've also
Hmm.
done a lot with the PJ Library, I've seen.
Yeah, they've been
I
when
love
they
that
were
organization.
starting, we kind of like, when my career was starting, they were just gearing up. And I
Mm.
heard them speak at the 92nd Street Y when they were just talking. And I was like, huh, this seems like something. And they said they really were looking for books about camp because that's their other initiative is they do a lot of, the Harold Grunspoon Foundation does a lot of camping
Yeah.
with Jewish camp stuff. So I said, "Oh, I'll make a Jewish book about camp, and maybe they'd like it," and they did. And that was Noah's Swimathon. So that was the first PJ Library book that I had both written and illustrated.
They,
That
I
PJ
think I
Ping.
cannot say enough good things about the organization. They've been very good to me also, and
Hmm.
I love the organization. So let's talk about Ping Pong Shabbat. So
Sure.
I had a chance to read it. I loved it. Such a sweet, inspirational book. I will say one part of it really pissed me off, but
Ooh, I need to know that.
no,
How did I
that's not
piss you
that's not
off?
on your writing or anything like that. It's just one of the things about the whole situation that they did not, you know, change things for
That
her.
they did not accommodate her.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. So that
Yeah.
really annoyed the hell out of me. But because it's a true story aspect of it, it's about SD Ackerman. And for those who don't know, can you tell us about her, about the book, and how did you decide to focus on her to do a story?
Sure. So Esty Ackerman actually lives in West Hempstead. She lives in my neighborhood. We go to the
Oh,
same
okay.
shul. So when she is a ping pong champion, when she was very young, started playing, and loved it and really and started going to tournaments and really rose through the ranks.
Mhm.
And when she was 11 years old, she got all the way to the nationals tennis table competition and she made it to the gold medal match. And she is also a modern Orthodox Jew like I am. And her last final gold medal match was scheduled for late Friday night after Shabbat had started. And her parents said to her, Esty, you do what you choose. And she really, really thought about it and cried a lot about it and decided that Shabbat meant more to her. And she forfeited the game and gave it up. And then she came home thinking that was that. I got really far. I'm very proud of myself, but it didn't work out. And but someone heard her story, and then someone at the New York Post heard her story, and they interviewed her, and it made the New York Post. And once it made the New York Post, it made other papers, and once it made other papers, she got a lot of support and a lot of letters, and she kind of became a local hero. And that's how I found out about the story, reading about it in the newspapers and like, Esty, you go, girl.
Well, first of all, when parents say to you, especially to me, Jewish parents, you do what you think is best, we all know what that means anyway, first of all.
But you know what? I think if they really did, because it's not like she was gonna eat ham
Right.
while riding a car on Shabbat. It's ping pong. So she could have stayed at a hotel that was close by. She could have walked and not turned down any lights and played ping pong for her final match. So they really did, I think, mean SDU decide what you feel want to do because it's more of a personal, what feels right. And to her, a competition on Shabbat
Not,
didn't feel right. She's like, and I heard her explain it. She's like, there's press and there's photographs and there's medals and there's uniforms and there's competition. It just doesn't feel like Shabbat.
so did you go to them ahead of time and say, hey, I'd like to do a picture book?
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah. I went to Esty. Esty now is 24.
right, right.
So I spoke to her and I said, I think your story is incredible. I'd really love to tell it as a children's book. Can I interview you a couple of times and get all the information and we'll see what happens. So we did.
Was she pleased with the final product?
She's very happy. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you're doing another picture book that I must hear about. You're doing one on Mel Brooks?
Oh, I am. It's very cool. I'm doing it with the Intergalactic Afikoman.
Okay.
And it is so exciting because he's so cool. No, I was always taken with Mel Brooks. One, he's really funny. But what I was really taken is that how edgy and irreverent he was to take on really challenging topics with humor, racism, anti-Semitism, Hitler.
Right.
He really made fun of Hitler. And I've read that he has said how he wanted to take on Hitler because that's how you beat Hitler, by making fun of him and making the jokes and conquering it through humor. And so that's kind of the theme of the picture book. Like, how do you use humor to deal with adversity and challenges and overcoming difficult things? So that's really what I'm using his biography, the underlying lesson, to focus on.
You didn't reach out to him, did you? I mean,
We're in the process. Mel Brooks, if you can hear me, call. We really would love to involve him in the project if he is available, but he is also 98, so he
right,
might
yes.
not he may not want to spend his time with us.
I have reached out to him too, also for the other podcast I do, but yes, so I never heard back. So, but
Mm,
I hope you do. So there would
yeah.
be ways to get participation in things. So when you decide to do like a picture book or something based on someone else, I don't know if you're doing others. So you try to get as many their involvement as much as possible.
Well, I can't get to Mel Brooks because I'm not that
Right,
famous.
right.
And he's certainly a figure who's in the public domain. So when I'm writing about Mel Brooks, I am getting every book ever written about him. I'm getting his own autobiography. I'm watching videos. I'm watching his movies. Reading the article he did in 1970, whatever. He had a very long interview. Like, I'm just absorbing everything that I can to write his story. If I could get him on board, woohoo. Yeah. In contrast, Esty lives in my neighborhood. She
Oh,
answered the phone right away. And she's like a civilian. She's not a celebrity. She's a public figure because she's been covered in the media, but she's not, so for that,
great
I
story.
wouldn't, if she had said to me, and I really don't want to be in a picture book, I would be like, okay. And I wouldn't have done it because, it really needed her buy-in. Whereas Mel Brooks, he can take it if I write about him without it.
So you okay? So you're an author illustrator. So is it
Yes.
harder to get something through as like a combined artist, meaning that perhaps like a house might like your text and saying, but I want someone else to do the illustration. Is it tougher to get through? Is it like what do you find for
Oh,
yourself?
well, I always want to do both, if I can. But like Ping Pong Shabbat, we submitted as text only, and then I got an offer for it as a story. And then I said,
Mm,
"Would you consider me for the illustrations?" And they considered me and said, "No, we want Abigail to do it."
right.
And they seem to have been right because she did a great job. So I'm not sure that answers your question.
No, I've
It's
seen look.
sometimes I'm pitching a project and I'm showing them a dummy, or I'm showing them, like, I just, yesterday was showing another book to Intergalactic Afikomen that I'd worked on, and I can't tell you what it is yet because we're still talking, but like, I showed them the manuscript and I showed them character sketches because I really want to both write and illustrate that
Mhm.
project. Ping Pong Shabbat, I really would, of course, would have loved to illustrate it, but I didn't have to because um, it's a nonfiction story. My style's kind of cute. I mean, if you look behind me on the wall there, I do cute bunnies and koalas, and Estee's a real person. So I really understood that they really might want to have a different look.
Right.
That's my stuff's a little bit too cutesy in terms of my art. That might not match the story. Like, I sometimes write stories that need a different illustrator's voice
Mhm.
on it. Does that answer the
Yeah, no,
question?
because so just from what I know, and I was an agent for a while, and a lot of times um, they want they don't like when you submit both together. They wanted, but I was just
I
curious
don't
how
like when
this
you
is.
submit both together unless both,
Uh,
you are the both. Meaning, if
right,
I teamed up with an illustrator who's not me, that would annoy them. But I pitch my own work.
mhm,
Sometimes they're like this and not separable. It really depends.
mhm. So, all
There's
right,
no there's no rules.
oh, that's true. Yes. All right. So let's go back now on some Jewish things here. Okay. So as we talked about PJ Library, I've asked a lot of the authors that I've had on here already who've on the show. What do you feel is right now is the current situation for in publishing for Jews?
Oh, there's so many anecdotes running around, aren't
Yeah,
there?
there are.
And look, I'm in my little bubble. I haven't had any problems, you know, but give me a minute. We'll see. I have friends who have been in situations that have been very troubling, where they were there, they went to a conference, and they were supposed to be on a panel, and people feel uncomfortable because they're Zionists. It's kind, and they're having to start advocating. They just came there to promote their book, and now they
Right.
have to defend the Jewish people. They just want to talk about their book. It's gotten, certainly on social media, it's gotten ugly, you know,
As always.
um, as always. But I don't think I have anything genius to say. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of and that by definition intimidates people and tightens you up and makes you not want to write your Jewish story. And we have to push through and do it anyway. That's
Have
kind of
you
my
have you
take on it.
have you written anything on Israel itself at all, or no?
Yeah,
How did
next
that go?
year, I've got two things coming. One is with Behrman House, Apples and Honey Press. Um, do you remember when last year, before October 7th, so I guess 2 years ago now, SCBWI had this whole
Of
brouhaha
course,
where,
yeah.
yeah, that made me very upset. And sometimes when I
Upset
get
is putting it
angry,
mildly. Yes.
yes, sometimes when I get angry, I write a book. So when that happened and the whole controversy was, standing up, whatever, SCBWI said anti-Semitism is bad and somebody objected. That's kind of what
Of
happened.
course, yes, yes.
And somehow tied it into Israel. And I was
Well,
like,
the
fine.
person who objected, their own page was littered with anti-Semitic things.
Yes, yes. So I was upset.
Right.
Anyway, so I said, so there. Finally, I'm going to write a Zionist picture book. That was like my response to it. And I wrote the story of Truman and his friend Eddie Jacobson, Harry
Okay.
Truman, Eddie Jacobson, and their friendship, and how Harry Truman ultimately decided to recognize Israel because of that friendship.
Oh, very cool.
And that's coming out next year with Behrman House. So that was my first Zionist undertaking. And then, but that's really about a friendship and it has Zionism in it.
Right.
I'm working with a historian, Gail Troy, on a book for Geffen Publishers based in Israel that is either going to be called, it's going to be a biography series, either called Zionist Dreamers or Israeli Dreamers. We haven't decided yet. But the first one's about Ben Gurion, and
Okay.
that is quite Zionist. So start the clock for my cancellation now.
Well, either way, you have one copy sold already from me from that.
Actually, I should just point out Gil Troy, who's my co-author, who's really the lead of the project because
Mhm.
he's the historian. He's the historian and he knows everything, and then I'm helping him make it kid friendly. Um, but he just got canceled on TikTok. I think he posted today. He has a book about how to deal with anti-Zionism on college campuses, and he posted today in the Jewish Journal that he got thrown off. The video got thrown off of TikTok.
I'm
So
gonna have
that's like kind of the thing that's
to.
happening. It's like you can't say what, because like when TikTok cancels your video, you're like, why did they cancel it? What's going on? And it's hard to measure it, but it doesn't feel good.
I will say for this podcast itself, actually, when I post it on anywhere, I will get. It doesn't have to be about Israel. It could just be an author. It could just be. I just mentioned I spoke to the one on iFlix to you, so it's I get comments underneath it, uh,
Free
anti-Semitic
Palestine.
comments about right
Yeah.
exactly like that against Israel. So he doesn't have to say anything about Israel in the post, but I'll get it. And also, Facebook does not let me promote certain videos itself because it's too, I guess, controversial, and none of them. Sometimes they don't have anything. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah. So when you're a little author and you're trying to promote your books and you're working in that climate, that is very stymieing.
Yeah,
If that's a word.
it's infuriating. It just
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah, it's depressing and it's demoralizing and you got to just do it anyway. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
of
thing.
course.
Everybody's got to be like I heard Brett Stevens say in one of his talks, everyone's got to be 10% more Jewish.
Well, no, I do agree with that. I always
Yeah.
feel like one of the things, the side benefits to me has been this coming together of the Jewish community,
Hmm.
for the most part. That I definitely feel more Jewish. I'm willing to embrace more of my Judaism than before.
Hmm.
I was always very Jewish minded, but I much more so now.
I
But I
think
think
we
that's,
all are. I
yeah,
think we all are. That's like, I never wanted to write about Israel until I saw that SCBWI thing. I'm like, now I'm writing about Israel. Like, it's just like
100%.
it gets your back up and you're like, okay, here I am,
I agree
and
with you
that's
100%. Yeah.
so, but that's my response because I'm a confrontational person. Other people, other people I'm sure are hiding.
Yeah. Look,
And then
there's
we won't
things,
see them because they're hiding.
right. There are two things. Look, I mean, it's very tough because I'm like you. I'll shove it in your face now more.
Yeah,
And also, I always get annoyed, which I shouldn't. Like, if you're not speaking up now, what are you waiting?
right,
This is the time right now.
right. Hmm.
So that's it. So anyway, let's go back to you. What are you working on next?
Okay, what am I working on next? So I'm working on this intergalactic Coleman book, which I'm not allowed to tell you about,
Okay,
because we're still working on the contract. But we're working on Mel Brooks, so that's exciting.
right.
I'm doing another book with them called Matzo Pizza, which is about Matzo, a grandfather and his
My kids
grandson
love
making.
that, and I never got into matzo pizza.
So that'll be fun. Kayla and Kugel is the series that I've been doing for years with Behrman House, and Kayla and Kugel Purim is coming out this Purim.
Oh, that's
I'm
cute.
working on Kayla and Kugel Rosh Hashanah right now. So Kayla and Kugel will continue to ride. Um, Behind me, you could see those two little board books, my mezuzah
Yes,
and
very
my
cool.
matzah. So I have a board book series coming out. Those are the first two, and there's also my dreidel and my shofar.
Mhm.
And the my chauffeur is an elephant blowing a shofar, and the dreidel is a dog because dogs spin, and so do
Okay, good.
dreidels. um, and I'm trying to think
You're,
of else.
you're very
Dependent on the
busy then.
president, dependent on the president, and I've got things out on submission with Joyce, who you know,
Yes,
and
yes.
um, and we're hoping.
Well, I wish you all the luck. So, and
Thank
how can
you.
people follow you on social media?
How can
How
people
can people follow you?
go to Instagram? Ann Koffsky, two F's, one S. Follow me. You could also go to my website, annkofsky.com, and there you could sign up to get my free coloring pages. I make free coloring pages before all
Those
the
are very cute. Yes, I did
holidays.
see those on your website. Very cute.
Yeah, I love doing them. I've been doing them for like 10 years, and I've got a nice list of people and educators and grandparents, and it's really fun because I get emails from people in like Wichita who like email me and say, "There's nothing Jewish here, but I have your coloring pages." So it's like really very rewarding.
That's very cute. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure getting to talk to you. And
Yeah, me too.
the book is Ping Pong Shabbat. It's a
It
great
is.
book. I highly recommend it. It's also a great story. You can get upset like I did, and then go on to the happier ending afterwards.
But the important part of that story is she
Yes,
came back the
yes,
next
she did.
year and got the gold medal.
Yeah, well,
So there.
spoiler alert. So again, this has been The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen. And again, a very special thanks to Ann Koffsky. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.